Here we go. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
And welcome.
Good morning.
Welcome once again to our beautiful JNForever family on Zoom. Well, another day in paradise, another day in lockdown, but we are always here to encourage you and to support you and to inspire you if wherever we can. You all know the in-house rules. We have everyone on mute during the speaker or the tour as we're doing today. There will be time for questions at the end, and you can certainly also write your questions in the chat box. We check that all the time, and we get to that afterwards. As you all know by now, I'm Jackie Chait. I'm the Legacy Manager for JNF Victoria. And just a small thing is that leaving a bequest does not mean that your descendants or your children will suffer. 1% to Israel, the 99% to your family would still go a long way to bettering the country and the people we hold so dear. So let's discuss it whenever you want, wherever you want. It's doable and the result is everlasting. I'm always available. Today, we have a very special event for everyone to enjoy without packing or going through customs or being asked a million questions at the airport in Israel, or schlepping a small parcel for your cousin's, uncle's, brother's son that then weighs 5 kilograms. And you can't say no, we've all had that. We are bringing you the beautiful central Israel whilst you relax in the air-conditioned or heated bus. We have two amazing tour guides with us today. We will start on the ground in Sydney with the incredible Yigal Nissel, who will also sum up at the end and give us further insight and answer any question whatsoever. You can ask Yigal about a stone or a pebble, and he will know who put it there and how it got there and when it was put there. So Yigal Nissel is JNF's education shaliach for JNF Australia. He arrived in Sydney in 2015 with a vision of infusing a love and understanding of Israel through JNF. Yigal uses education and outreach programs in Jewish day schools and holiday camps to demonstrate tangible contributions made by JNF to improving life in Israel. He is passionate about developing educational values by leading and raising the generation of tomorrow's leadership to strengthen the connection to Israel. He was an integral part of the inaugural JNF Educator Study Tour to Israel in 2018. This study tour is now an annual event that has gone from strength to strength, where teachers from around Australia in both Jewish and secular schools and varying roles integrate their positive experiences and impressions of JNF and Israel into their curriculum upon their return. Yigal has a master's degree in law from Berkeley, California, and practiced law in Israel. Prior to that, he was actively involved with the Jewish Agency and B'nai Akiva's Shnat program in Europe. He's married to Noah and has 3 children, Abigail, Gabriel, and Michael. And he also put up with me for 10 days on the tour in 2020. I think that's a big achievement. Zev Kedem is our man on the ground in Israel. He has been a certified guide with Israel's Ministry of Tourism since 1973 and has worked with JNF for more than 30 years in various roles. He was born in Israel and graduated from university with degrees in Jewish history and Israeli education. Although Ze'ev retired from full-time work with JNF a few years ago, he likes to keep himself active by leading tours. I personally had the privilege of being on his bus on the Educators Tour in 2020. It seems like a lifetime ago, but this man's understanding of passion and genuine love and awe for the country is quite palpable. He gets so much joy and nachas from what he does and sharing his vast knowledge. I loved every second of the journey that we had together. So over to you, Yigal.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Thank you, Renee. And thank you all for joining us today. I'm Yigal, like Jackie mentioned, and I'm born and raised in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, the capital of the Jewish people. And I'm here already. This is my 6th year, a long time. And soon we're going to go back to Israel. That's the life of Shlichut. Now, one of the things that I really enjoyed doing, and I'm still enjoying doing, is to show Israel in a virtual way. Well, we can't unfortunately go now to Israel because of COVID, but this is the closest you will go. And today we're going to see, we want to watch a tour in the center of Israel through the JNF eyes. So those, I'm sure you're all familiar with JNF, but those who go to Israel, there's no one point in any way you look that you can't recognize a JNF project. If it's trees, if it's water, if it's buildings, if it's things that we just invest in this land, and we've done it for more than 120 years already. So all of you, on behalf of JNF, I wanted to thank you for your support. So today, we're going to visit, like I said, the center of Israel, and we're going to start in the Hayarkon Park in Tel Aviv. We're going to see the Maccabiah Bridge, where the tragedy happened in 1997 that we all know what happened there. We're going to go to a bit of insight and put and give a bit of history, and also see what's happened from then. We're going to go to 7 miles to Rosh Tzipor, Hod HaSharon Ecological Park, Ilanot Forest, and visit also a project called Roim Rachok, and finish in Eliav. Eliav is a small village where both religious and non-religious, secular, living together in harmony. So, like Jackie said, I'm going to share the screen. We're going to watch Ze'ev Kedem, our tour guide, giving this tour. And after it, I'm going to give a bit of insights, just a little bit, and also, of course, leave questions to you. You have any question, and also, I'm sure that many of you have been in Israel and maybe visited those places and wants to give also an insight from you. I would love to hear what you have to say. So here we go. Enjoy. I'm sharing the screen.
Good day, mates. One more virtual tour, this time at the center of Israel. I'm not going to take you to regular tourist attractions. I'm going to take you to special places and special projects that you can see only with the JNF tours. We are starting our tour today next to the Yarkon River. The Yarkon River is about 30 kilometers long, starting at the bottom of the Judean mountains and flowing to the Mediterranean Sea. For Israel, we always consider this river as a big river. In the past, the water were clean, and in the winter time, it created many swamps around. When the Jews came back to their homeland, they dried the swamps and started to settle the area. Settling the area created two things. One, there was a need for drinking water, and the springs were taken to use as drinking water. And the other one was pollution. The river became polluted from sewage, from industry that was developed around, and there was a huge change in the nature of this river. Israel was busy with other problems. No one paid attention to what's going on in our rivers until a tragedy happened on this river. Summer 1997. The Maccabiah Games are being planned to happen in Israel. The opening is in the Ramat Gan Stadium, 8 o'clock in the evening. 7:45 p.m. The Australian contingent is standing on a bridge, a temporary bridge that was built in order to cross the Yarkon River. 373 participants are standing on the bridge collapsed, 4 people being killed and 69 injured. The problem was not so much the falling into the water, the problem was the pollution in the water, and this created a disaster and a big tragedy. Let's go on the bridge and go to the memorial that was set over there in memory of the 4 victims. Hi Gideon.
Hi Zevik, Shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Well, Gideon Shavit is my colleague, representative of JNF Australia in Israel right now. But in 1997, he was nominated to be the Israeli emissary in Australia. Can you share with us what was the feeling in the community in Australia when you arrived to Australia?
Yeah, before I arrived in 14th of July, all of us was watching the opening ceremony of the Maccabiah, and we were shocked from the tragedy that happened in this bridge. I was running immediately to see the delegation, which I met them before because they were planting trees. A few weeks later, I was arriving in Sydney in Australia, and I must say it was kind of a mixed feeling. In one hand, the Jewish community in Australia felt a lot of anger and frustration, and the frustration was because the Maccabi World Union didn't take responsibility immediately, and even the state of Israel stepped in very slow. On the other hand, I must salute to the Jewish community in Australia. They kept their support to Israel, and they came with a beautiful project to clean the Yarkon River. And this is something that I always remember. This is very special.
This morning we are going to see some of the projects that were made with the money that was raised by JNF in order to improve the situation in the Yarkon. But before we continue in our tour today, I would like to take Gideon and to lay a bouquet of flowers on the monument nearby.
In memory of Greg Small, Yeti Bennett, Elizabeth Zwicky, and Warren Zions. May they rest in peace.
We are standing now in the next station in our tour. So the name of this place is 7 Mills. There used to be 7 mills to grind wheat along the Yarkon in this area. There were even more. And just behind me, you can see how did it work. There used to be one stone lay on the ground, another one was on top of it, round one, and with a stick they connected the upper one to the bottom. In the bottom, the water turned the wheel, and the wheat was grinded by the mill. They channeled the water from the Yarkon River, which is right next to us, to a pool, and from the pool, by tunnel, they let the water pass over here, and then back down to the river. The power between the level of the water created the turn of the wheel and created the business for the farmers in the area. The farmers from all the area used to come to this spot. There used to be a small kind of coffee shop over here and a small harbor, and they could stay overnight or few nights over here until they finished to grind all the wheat, and then they would go back and sell it or produce bread out of it or stuff like this. This was the history of the Yarkon, and in 1936 there was a diesel introduced to the country, and the mills that were powered by the water disappeared. So we wanted our children to know about the history of the place, and by contribution of JNF, we succeeded to re-establish the model of this mill that used to be here in the past. We are meeting here Yaron. Yaron is an ornithologist. He is the birdman of JNF KKL here in Israel. But I would like to share with you, first of all, where are we right now? We're still in the surrounding of the Yarkon area. Around the river was developed a beautiful park, Park Yarkon, or Ganei Yoshua, the other name they call it. And this is a large park, not smaller than the Central Park in New York. The issue that we are dealing in this project is the birds. Israel became a very important place because of the bird migration. Every year, 500 million birds coming from Europe to Africa, and later on in the spring they are flying back to Europe. Those are huge numbers, huge variety. Very simple to understand why, because Israel on one side has the Mediterranean Sea, too long to fly without fueling. On the other side there is the desert, and Israel is very comfortable for them. They can fuel themselves, they can eat, they can continue to fly the long flight from one continent to another continent. Because of that, Israel has a great interest for bird lover, bird watcher. And Yaron, will you share with us the story of the birds with JNF KKL?
JNF understood that Israel is becoming a superpower in the world birding scene. And 6 years ago we established JNF Wings. This is the project in Kakal JNF that deals with birding. Actually, the top goal of this project is to connect birds and people. And the best place to connect birds and people is here in the center of the population of Israel in Tel Aviv. Thanks to a very generous donation of JNF Australia, we established this birding center. It is one of 11 birding centers that we are planning to establish from Agmon Achula up in the north, that we define as the northern gate to Israel, through all the country, through Agmon Chefer and Park Yerucham and Park Nachal Be'er Sheva and Rosh Tzipor, of course, to the southern gate to Israel, which is the birding park of Eilat. So we are establishing a network of birding center all around the country, alongside with the birding courses for children and for adults, alongside with some events. We have the largest birding event in Israel called Tzaparaton or Birdathon that we are doing every Sukkot. So thousands of Israelis are coming to this event. So we are very busy connecting Israeli people to the beauty of the birds and to the variety of the birds of Israel.
Is there research involved in those kind of activities?
Yeah, so JNF Wings is actually funding many research projects in universities here in Israel. As part of it, we are also doing some banding for the birds in our birding centers. And if you'd like to come and see some banding that we are doing here,
you're welcome. To do it. Okay. I will have to do it. Let's show it to our group.
We came here very early this morning to put some mist nets in the area. This is a tiny bird called chiffchaff. Called chiffchaff because of its song, and it's wintering here. It's not breeding in Israel, it's breeding in Europe, and now it is bended. The weight of this ring is nothing. It's like putting a small bracelet on your hand, so it doesn't disturb the bird at all. So the wing length of this tiny one is 61 millimeters. The minimum time that it hatched was last spring, so it's already at least in its second calendar year. The indication for this bird to start fueling itself towards the spring migration is the status of its fat, and they keep the fat here. The weight is 7.6 grams. Tiny birds like this, in the age of 2 months, its parents already started migrating, and in Finland she starts migrating to Africa. And in this small brain she knows exactly the route without any flock, without anything, without any compass, without GPS, without Waze, Google Maps, nothing.
Bye-bye, man. We left the areas next to the Yarkon, and we are standing right now on the top of a dam mountain that became a lookout, a beautiful lookout. From here, you can look south on my left side and see the Yarkon River, and in between the Yarkon, down there, you can see an artificial mound. The name is Tel Kana. Tel Kana is mentioned not only in the Bible, even in the Egyptian inscriptions before the Bible. It was a very important place some 3,000 years ago. In some archaeological digging that was made over there, they found warriors that were buried with the horses over there. And here it connects us to the Canaanites that lived here some 3,000 years ago. The Israelites conquered the area when they came to this land about 2,500 years ago. And then, about the beginning of the 20th century, the first Jewish orchard was planted in the valley just below us, between us and the Yarkon River, and the famous Jaffa orange was developed over here. So here you have generations of connections from the biblical time to the 20th century, and here we are standing in the 21st century, and I would like to relate again to the great effort to maintain, to develop the area and to clean the Yarkon as well. After the tragedy in the bridge, the government of Israel received the decision to build a center where the sewage will be purified, to clear the water from the sewage, and this is done just behind me. The water from this center are being used for agriculture as a secondary use for those water, but also after they clean them, part of it is being sent and free into the Yarkon River. The water arrived down here to wetlands that continue to clean them. Wetlands means like a marsh, where you have a kind of small stones that help to clean the water. You have plants that have microbes in the roots, and they clean the water. Also, they kind of have fountains that provide oxygen that help to clean the water. By all those means of the wetlands, they clear the water to a level that people can use it for many other uses. And aside of irrigation for agriculture, if you look behind me, there is a beautiful lake that was built around. Look in the weekdays, how many people come and enjoy the beauty of this place. There are many birds over there and recreation area. And there is also a little river that was formed using the water that were purified. Sewage water that used to contaminate, used to do a problem in nature. Today they are being cleaned and they create a new environment for the Yarkon, and this is amazing. How from a tragedy that happened, unfortunately, a lot was done. Support of JNF Australia was the boost to the developing of the wetlands, and after that the developing of ecological park here next to the city of Hod Hasharon and next to the river of the Yarkon, that is much clearer today than it used to be in the end of the 20th century. Well guys, we are going to a totally different subject right now. We are visiting a place called Ilanot. Ilanot means trees. And you know that with the first comers, the first Zionists that moved and made Aliyah to this land, found it empty. Not too many trees. The Ottomans cut the trees in order to move their trains or stuff like this. And there was a need to rebuild all the forestation in this country. The only problem was that we didn't know what kind of trees can grow here. So immediately after the State of Israel was established, the government sent people to search for different types of trees from all the continents around the world, maybe except of Antarctica. And they brought different species, I believe something like 750, and planted them over here, just behind us.
Today Ilanot is a botanical garden, and we have here 350 trees left from the 700 that they planted here in the 50s. And a lot of people come to visit the place, some of them just to feel the green, and some of them come to learn about the different trees that we have here. We have trees from all over the world, America, Asia, Africa, Australia, and a lot of trees that was very succeed here. You can find them all over Israel. Today we have here a navigation game for families that use the smartphone, and they have to find the trees and to answer questions and quiz and puzzles. And we have our beautiful visitor center that deal with the forest and the foresting in Israel and all over the world, that the people can learn about how forests look in the different places of the world. They can ride a bicycle and feel like they're riding in the forest. And we have a beautiful short movie and a quiz about trees. We have different programs for different kids from kindergarten until high school. This botanical garden is accessible, and all of the people can walk around and enjoy the garden.
About 250 million trees were planted here. And if you have so many green patches in this country, it's due to donations from around the world. So you have a part in this beautiful country that became green, while most of the countries cut their trees. Here we are heading every year the most that we can, and this place is a central place to teach and to make the children aware and people from around the world to come and to understand what happened here with deforestation in Israel. So thank you very much. We are here with Tal Vardi and Nir. The program is Ro'im Rachok. It's a unique program that prepare young people on the autistic spectrum to serve in elite unit in the IDF, to support our security here in Israel, to use the special skills that they have that not everybody has, and on the way to learn skills that will serve them in the life after the army. And I would like to ask Tal, what is this unique program?
Ro'im Rachok program is a program that actually gives the opportunity to young adults on the autistic spectrum to enhance the skills and to contribute to themselves, to the society and Israel as a whole. And we started it in 2013, understanding that people on the spectrum have different visual capabilities, creating this win-win between young adults on the spectrum and the real needs in the IDF when it comes into computer programming, information sorting, electronics and so on. And we are sitting here in our place that was actually with support of JNF. We run here a 3-month course, a unique course. You can't find it any other places in the world that train young adults on the spectrum to the military profession, but at the same time to gain all the life skills and working skills are needed for them to serve in the IDF. We have graduates from the program that started to work in companies around Israel. Our program doesn't end in the military service, and actually the most important stage is what's happened afterwards. So we created this program that opened doors for our graduates to the high-tech industry and to the Israeli industry, and we, Ro'im Rachok, support them in the working place.
I joined the 3rd course of air photographer analysis, and I served for almost 3 years, like full service, and it was very fun. I met very interesting people, very nice people, which today some of them are my best friends. I'm working at Intel as a manufacturer specialist, and I'm working with machines that manufacture the chips that we are fabricating.
I would like to say this is so exciting. I feel like hugging you, Nir, because it's such a challenge and you have made it, and you contributed so much to Israel by your service and now by your being independent. And this is something to learn from. To our last station for the day. This is a lovely community called Eliav. With us, Ariel, Yosef, Abigail and Ori. This is a young community combined of religious and secular young Israeli families, very close to the border of the Palestinian Authority, and an area that used to be a kind of the Wild West of Israel. And today you can see beautiful houses and beautiful people that come to live over here. Share with us what brought you over here and how do you feel about living in this community?
We arrived at this community about 12 years ago as a young couple with a young baby living in Jerusalem. We were looking for a small community of religious and non-religious, and we wanted to live with other parts of the Israeli community, Israeli society, and we found all of this here. So it was since then it was a beautiful journey to build our permanent houses, to move here, to raise our kids here, and we're very happy to be here.
Immediately we felt like this is home, that this is where we're gonna be. As I said, everybody was young, maybe 1, 2, 3 children at the beginning,
Our journey to here was about 15 years ago. We heard about this community that was coming together of young people who wanted to raise their kids together in a very tolerant community, religious, not religious. We really wanted that. Every single time we came out here to visit, we thought it was the end of the world. Where were we going to live? I may be slightly biased, but I actually think this is the most beautiful area in all of Israel. It really is truly stunning, especially now with all the flowers. But what brought us here was it was the community. It was understanding that there could be this amazing atmosphere to raise our kids in, where there's no right and wrong. There are many different paths, and we can live together. That's what we've been doing since. It's been a privilege for us to know the JNF community. We really feel like we share the same values, and so many people across the JNF Australia community have donated to make sure that our community succeeds and that the idealism that we live by can live. Everything that has been built up here because of JNF is making it possible. It is literally the heart of the community. It's where everything happens. Festivals, youth movement, gatherings, everything happens there. So JNF is part of this community.
Ori, what is your favorite thing here in Eliav?
My favorite thing is my friends. We are not the same, everyone, but we are still friends.
To finish the day meeting people like you guys, it's inspiring, and you're the future. It's the end of another virtual tour. After this exciting visit in Eliav, where we met some young families, we have to remember we saw today beautiful nature at the center of Israel. We saw some projects that most of the tourists will never see and know about, and you saw real Israel, beautiful Israel. Let's go back to our hotel and have a nice sleep tonight, and we will continue in a wonderful another tour in the Galilee.
Okay, shalom everyone, shalom again. So I hope you enjoyed the tour. I'm going to share the screen one more time to show you, just to go a bit of more insights about what we saw, just a few minutes, and then I'm going to leave some time for questions I'm sure you have, or any comment you want to say and you want to share with us. Much appreciated. So here we go. I'm going to share the screen. 1 second. Here we go. Okay, great. So I'm going to just to show you very, very quickly how the map of Israel looks like. There's 9.3 million people in Israel, 9.3, like it's a record of numbers. And the 9.3, as you can see here, are not really spread all of Israel. The majority are from Be'er Sheva all the way to the north. That's the majority. From Be'er Sheva all the way to Eilat, so not including Be'er Sheva and not including Eilat, there's only around 12,000 people lives. So the whole Negev, it's crazy numbers. Ramat HaNegev and the Arava, only around 12,000 people. That's all. It's the vision of David Ben-Gurion of bringing as many people as possible to the Negev. Now we understand how critical it is, and that's the main mission of also the JNF Australia, to get as many people as possible, and that's why we invest so much on projects in the Negev. That's the future of Israel. And today we concentrate on the region of the central region. You can see on Tel Aviv and on the central region today in Israel, where it's one of the key places that we have in Israel. Now, just very briefly about the bridge disaster that we have, the Asona Maccabiah on the 14th of July, 1997, where 4 people unfortunately died and more than 69 people was injured. It was a real disaster for of course for Israel, but also for the Maccabiah, but also of course for the Australian community, the Jewish Australian community. And this is the VIC is working for KKL in Israel, for JNF in Israel, having a ceremony on their behalf. And it's one of the real things that Israel was really ashamed of having that, and not only about the bridge, because bridge can collapse, you know. Of course they went to the engineer and those who was involved went to prison. But what happened really, the disaster was that when the people were falling into the water, and the bridge wasn't a high bridge, it wasn't a big bridge, it was actually a small bridge. And if the water was pure, wasn't any, it didn't have any sewage water in it, so people would probably survive. But the problem is that they swallowed this horrible water, and that's why that's the main reason they died. I'm going to go through with you just a bit what we have changed from then, that this can never happen again. Very briefly here, just to show you a bit of history. So the Anzac warriors, the English, the British, and the Australian and New Zealand soldiers, they arrived in the First World War in 1917. They arrived to the water here, to the Mediterranean Sea, and you can see the Yarkon River, and they wanted to come in, but the Ottomanic, the Turks, they stopped them. They didn't want them to come in from here, so they were stuck for more than 9 months in this area. And you can see a bridge with the horses of the Anzac that you can see here that they built to come in. Eventually, after 9 months, they succeeded of coming in, and that was the main route to the center of Israel, of the Yarkon Park. This is a bit of pictures of the Yarkon River today. Imagine swamps, imagine pollution, imagine things that nobody wanted to come near, and also the Anzacs. I'm sure if the Anzac warriors will come, we'll show them today how the Yarkon River looks like, they wouldn't believe it, because there was diseases, cholera and different kind of diseases that swamps brings, and that's why nobody wanted to come near, and many people also got sick and died in that time, and really changed the whole picture. Unfortunately, in Israel, we do stuff sometimes only after a tragedy happened, and that's what happened, of course, in the Maccabiah tragedy in 1997. So this is a bit of the Yarkon River today, how it looks like. It's a beautiful, beautiful area that you can really go, and you don't really swim, but also if you swim, it's safe today to swim. And this is a memorial stone that we put for the Anzac who lost their life in that operation of coming in from the Mediterranean Sea and winning the war. I want to speak very briefly about the bird migration that we have in Israel, because this is one of the most miracle thing, one of the biggest miracle we have. If you hear me, if you heard me before, and if you speak with me about Israel, you understand how much passion I have, and just describe Israel as a nes, as an absolutely miracle. And one of the miracles that we have is just to see years before, 73 years old is Israel, but in 73 years, just to see and watch how Israel has changed and how we made this beautiful country really, and one of the leading countries in so many aspects. And one of the aspects is the bird migration that we have coming from the Western Europe, going all the way to Africa, but stopping in Israel. More than 500 million birds every year are stopping in Israel, and the farmers are really suffering from that, especially in the Hula Valley, because they don't want to leave. They have so much food to eat, and there's no swamps anymore, as you know. So there was swamps in Hula Valley, and there was swamps in the Yarkon River. This is Rosh Tzipor. This is the head of the bird. This is Ayalon River, and this is the Yarkon River. And you can understand why this is called Rosh Tzipor. It looks like a bit like the head of the bird. One of the birds that we have in Israel are the pelicans. Now, the pelicans are absolutely amazing birds. and the weight is 10 kilos, and they are 3 meters long, and they eat 1.5 kilo fish every day, and this is in the Yarkon River, and there are 250,000 pelicans in the whole world. 50,000 of them are stopping in Israel. Can you imagine 50,000 of 250,000 in the world? Because they have food, they have a place to be. A desert country, bird migration are coming to Israel, so many of them, millions of millions. Absolutely amazing. Just another look. Again, a few pictures of birds that we have. We have beautiful birds that we have in Israel. We have also, of course, the Natural Museum that that I'm sure that many of you have been, but it's just to show which animals have been in Israel for years, for thousands of years in Israel. Yes, those animals that you can see here have been in Hula Valley not so many years ago. We're speaking about 200, 300 years ago. But of course, people moving and also drying the swamps, and we're going to speak about it very soon, about to see what the outcome of drying all of them and how we become an empire of water and recycling water. One of the things that we have in Israel is very proud of, we have the eucalyptus trees. Now, the eucalyptus trees are not from Israel. We took them from Australia. Why? Because they are #1 trees in the world by taking water, drinking water. They need a lot of water, and we got help from them. We're speaking about hundreds of thousands of trees and planted it in Israel to drink the swamp water, and that was huge help from the Australian government getting those trees. I want just to share with you a quick story. If you know Eli Cohen, the spy, went to Syria. Just a famous story about him and the eucalyptus, that when he went on the border in Syria, looking at Israel and pretending, we're helping the Syrian army, one of the things that they said to him, we have a big problem because the Israeli can see all our bunkers, and there was underground bunkers. And they said, do you have a suggestion? And then he came with an idea that the Syrian government or the army will buy eucalyptus trees and plant them next to each bunker to put a shade that the Israeli won't see. So he convinced them to do it. Australia sent eucalyptus, they bought eucalyptus trees, they planted them next to each bunker, but then Eli Cohen said to the Israeli government, the army, he told them, where all the trees are planted, then you know that the bunkers are, then you know where the bunkers are. So that's, and in the war that we had, they knew exactly where they are, and that was a huge advantage. And of course, we know this, the finish of Eli Cohen, but how amazing this person was, and many reasons for winning the wars that we had was because of him. Very briefly, I just want to show you, I'm going a bit forward because I know that we have stress on time, and also I wanted to ask questions. We have in Israel also the Ilanot Visitor Center and interactive. JNF is not just showing project and say, okay, how people can live, but we also educate. We teach people of Israel, kids, youth, students, everyone who wants to come, how important it is on nature. JNF has planted more than 240 million trees in Israel. 1 million of them, the largest forest in Israel is in the middle of the Negev, Ya'ar Yatir, 4 million trees in the middle of the Negev. The majority of the 240 million trees are in the Negev of Israel, the desert. Planting trees in the desert, it's if you don't call it a miracle, I don't know how you can call it. I want to finish with this person, Tal Vardi. We saw him in the movie. Tal Vardi was the Mossad. He was in Mossad. He was in the army, a general, and then he went to the Mossad. He finished with the Mossad, and he decided to invest in a program that called Ro'im Rachok. Ro'im Rachok is this program that takes a youth on the autism spectrum, and instead of them just volunteering in the army of maybe 1 year if they want to, they don't have to normally, and usually doing just office work, he saw the potential of them, how smart they are, how we can use them in a way that nobody else can be used in the regular people who goes to the army. So what did he see? He saw that they can concentrate in a way that nobody can. So they opened with his program a special unit in 8200. It's a secret unit in the Israeli intelligence, where they look down, they can see, they can just watch the computers the whole day and see in maps, from satellite maps, to spot if there's any changes, anything that are specific, if somebody is, if the enemy are hiding, etc., and they can spot it on the spot because they can concentrate in a way on the computers, on the monitors, that in a way that nobody else can do. And because of them, we had a lot of luck. We had a lot of operations that successfully done, and so many people are thanking Tal Vardi and this program, Roim Rachok, of also helping those people who wouldn't go to the army or just going to volunteer and doing just a simple job in the army, but actually taking them, training them, following them, and actually helping the Israeli army and the Israeli state with all the things that security that we have in Israel. So I know it was brief, and there's so much to tell more about Israel. But I really want to hear your questions, and or if you have remarks about that you want to say.
Igal can talk. If you've got the whole day today, he can talk the whole day. And he forgot to mention that those birds were fed falafels. That's why they. Anyone with a question, just unmute yourself, and please feel free to just ask a question. Anybody? Igal, I'll just tell you on the chat, there was some, somebody says, is Hayakun Jordan in English? And then somebody said, yes, no, Jordan is Yarden. Then there was comment, love the tour. Thank you, so well done. Thank you, a wonderful tour, a wonderful journey, fabulous presentation, loved every minute. So that's always good to see that people have enjoyed it.
Can I say something? I cannot believe that I thought JNF only planted trees. So I won't tell you how old I am, but you can see the gray hair. I've only learned today what JNF has done. So thank you. Toda rabah.
And you know, when I arrived to Australia, and I really appreciate it. I don't know, what's your name? What's your do? I can't hear.
Debbie.
Hi, Debbie. When I arrived to Australia and I went to the schools and I asked, somebody knows what JNF does. So everybody said, yeah, you plant trees. So that's absolutely right. But we do so much more. We do so much more in Israel, in water, in education, there's so much. So thank you for sharing that insight.
Yes, Judy, you can unmute yourself. Here we go.
I have one question. When is the next tour?
So I can tell you that if you saw in the end, so this is we have done 8 tours in Israel, 8, 4 and a 4. So 4 are connected and the other 4 are connected. This is one of the 4 that we have done that's really new. This is in the center. We have 2 in the Negev, 1 in the center, and the last one in the north. So this was in the center. I'm sure if people wants to join, and Jackie will organize again a different one. Wow, there's so much to show. Yeah, and I'm already, and I can tell you that I'm already working on the next tours in Israel, concentrate in Tzfat and different places to give you more insight in different eyes of Israel.
Yeah, this has been wonderful. Thank you very much.
And Jackie and
yes, yeah.
That was quite an emotional tour for me, but starting in 97, when we visited with the JNF, the memorial for the athletes, but also when we went to the bird park, and I had the honor and the pleasure of releasing a tagged bird. That was just so beautiful. And I remember all the places that we went together. Maybe not the first tour, maybe the second tour. I can't remember now which one it was, but that was also beautiful and very beautifully presented. Thank you, Yigal.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I can tell you, Leah, that, you know, as Jackie mentioned in the beginning, we are in the last years, we took teachers to Israel, principals, teachers, educators. And when you take an educator, if they're Jewish, they've been in Israel a few times and it's great, they always learn. But when you take a non-Jewish person, specifically when it's a principal, okay, so, or a leader in that school, and you show them those places that you just saw, and they can't imagine that in 73 years we accomplished what we accomplished, and we are going, you know, I don't know when last time you've been, Leah, in Israel, but every year it's changing. Every year you see a different picture, a different thing, a new place, because we are always moving, and we never forget. Also, we are doing mistakes, and that's what I said in my presentation. The Maccabiah, what happened, the Maccabiah was a big mistake, and Israel took responsibility on it, and we should always take responsibility when we do mistakes, but we should also learn from it, and that's what we did. JNF cleaned the Yarkon village, river, we cleaned it, that today there won't be any more tragedy as it was with the Maccabiah.
Kol hakavod. Anyone else?
Jackie, can I say something?
Of course you may.
That's me, is it?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, hi. That was an amazing presentation. I just want to say, as an athlete who was on the bridge when it went down, to see that, how it looks and what you guys have achieved, and it's just amazing to see that 25 years later.
Wow.
And of course, some of us, you know, who passed away aren't here, but those of us who didn't, I think it really does bring shivers up my spine. That's such a fantastic response that Israel and the community has done. And I actually can't wait to go there and have a look at that myself next time I have an opportunity to go to Israel. So thank you for including that in your presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So on behalf of everybody, thank you to Yigal, thank you to Zev. When you speak to him next, please, Yigal, thank him, because he's not even seeing that, you know, we're doing this. He's the most remarkable man. Thank you, Bella. Thank you for being here.
I wanted to Jackie, just to take the opportunity and wish everyone Shana Tova. Everyone Shana Tova, a healthy year.
To you too. Thank you, and to you.
And as we say, L'Shana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim Abniyah.
Absolutely. And we will see you, but we will still see you next week. We have an amazing event next week, JNForever event. We've got a sensational, very different from today.
It's good.
Keep it going. We keep you all inspired. We're going to have a very different event next week. But we will, yes, and I've seen there are a lot of people asking if there will be a recording. All our events are recorded, and they are on YouTube under JNForever, so you can go back and watch everything that you'd like to. The other tours, we will do the other tours. We'll actually, what I will do is try and find out if we can have them as a series where we get together and do them if Yigal's available and willing, we can do them as a series.
Not saying no to you, Jackie, you know that.
Yes, that's much nicer than just watching them as a video online. So we need Yigal. We can't do it without him. No ways, no ways. So we will see you all next week, and have a wonderful day. Enjoy what you can. And
bye everyone. Litrot. Shalom. Keep safe.
Shabbat shalom. Bye.